For years, whenever you talk about the future of AI, your mind would probably jump to places like Silicon Valley or maybe the UK's Bletchley Park. Well, that's all starting to shift. A really important global AI summit just wrapped up, and it wasn't for years, whenever you talk about the future of AI, your mind would probably jump to places like Silicon Valley or maybe the UK's Bletchley Park. Well, that's all starting to shift. A really important global AI summit just wrapped up, and it wasn't in California or England. It was in New Delhi. And that signals a massive change in the world of AI.
And this photo right here, it really says it all. This was not just another tech conference. The India AI Impact Summit was the very first of its kind to be hosted in the Global South. That's the term for the developing nations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And hosting it there was a very deliberate choice. The whole point was to move the conversation away from just abstract fears about safety and towards the real tangible impact AI can have on billions of actual lives.
So, what was the big idea behind it all? Well, the goal was pretty ambitious, to hammer out a new, much more inclusive global agenda for artificial intelligence. The focus here was way less on corporate profits and much more on human welfare, and making sure that everyone gets fair access to this incredibly powerful technology. And they actually managed to get a whole lot of people on the same page. This number, 89, that's how many countries and international organizations came together and signed the final declaration. I mean, this is one of the broadest agreements on AI that we have ever seen. Okay, so this slide gets to the heart of the whole philosophical shift they were going for. For the past year, so much of the talk around AI has been about AI safety. Basically pumping the brakes and worrying about the risks. This summit was all about pivoting to what they're calling democratic diffusion. And that's about hitting the accelerator, about actively spreading the tools, the data, and all the benefits to every nation, not just a privileged few.
So what came out of all this? Well, the main event, the big takeaway, was a landmark agreement called the New Delhi Declaration. And the whole declaration is built on these three core principles, or sutras, which are drawn from Indian philosophy. First up is people, making sure AI is always human-centric and protects our rights. Second is planet, ensuring its development is sustainable. And third is progress, using AI as a tool to lift everyone up economically. It's a really holistic vision, It grounds this futuristic tech in some pretty timeless values.
Okay, so how are they actually going to do all this? They organize the work into 7 groups, called Chakras. And as you can see, each one is laser-focused on a critical area. You've got human capital for training the workforce of the future, safe and trusted AI for making sure systems are transparent. It's basically a comprehensive roadmap to turn this big vision into something real.
All right, so that's the global picture. Now let's zoom in on India itself, because the host nation isn't just talking the talk. They're rolling out a massive national strategy to lead this charge.
And a huge part of their strategy is this concept of sovereign AI. So what does that mean? Well, in simple terms, it's about a nation having the power to build, use, and govern its own AI systems, using its own infrastructure, its own data, and its own talent. The whole point is technological independence, so you're not totally reliant on other countries or big foreign companies.
And this is the philosophy guiding India's whole approach, called the M.A.N.A.V vision. The name itself is actually an acronym that spells out the core principles: moral, accountable, national, accessible, and valid. It's a human-first framework that's meant to steer their entire AI development process.
And look, this isn't just talk. They're backing this vision up with some serious hardware. At the summit, India announced it's adding another 20,000 GPUs to its national infrastructure. GPUs are those super specialized chips that are basically the engines of AI, so this is a huge boost to the country's AI muscle.
And the financial commitments? Whoa, they're just as impressive. During the summit, over $250 billion were pledged to build out all the necessary infrastructure. We're talking everything from data centers to the plants that make semiconductors, all to support this homegrown AI ecosystem. Okay, so policy and big numbers are great, but what does all of this actually mean for people on the ground? Let's take a look at how this vision is already being turned into real-world tools that are making a difference.
I think this quote from Anshul Singhal just nails it perfectly. The focus isn't just on making the next viral app. It's about building the fundamental tools that can bring more people into the digital world and give them access to essential services. It's about building infrastructure for inclusion.
And this ecosystem isn't just a handful of companies either. It is vibrant and growing fast.
To prove it, they released a brand new repository at the summit that maps out over 110 startups that are specifically using AI for social impact. It really paints a clear picture of all the innovation that's already happening.
And we're not talking about theoretical ideas here. These startups are tackling critical, real-deal challenges. We're seeing AI-powered tools that give farmers life-saving advice on their crops, help doctors in rural villages detect diseases earlier, and even make the justice system more efficient with automated transcription. This is practical stuff that impacts millions of lives. But of course, it can't all be sunshine and roses, right? For a balanced picture, we have to look beyond the promises. The summit also brought up some major challenges and criticisms, so let's dig into the practical side of all this. So here's the reality check. On one side, you have the promise of sharing AI's benefits with everyone. The problem? The declaration is totally voluntary, it's non-binding, there's no enforcement, there's talk of creating new jobs, but that's up against the very real threat to nearly 6 million entry-level IT jobs that are at risk from automation. And yeah, the massive infrastructure boom is exciting, but it comes with huge environmental costs and a real risk of becoming a data colony, where foreign companies end up owning and profiting from the country's data.
So how do you balance all these competing forces? Well, one potential solution that was talked about at the summit is this idea of structured openness. It's kind of like this. Let's keep the data infrastructure open to fuel innovation, but at the same time, let's build